everyone, I'm back, and I'd like to give a verbal diarrhea of a lesson, and I like to refer to this lesson as the lesson of the Napier Nomad. Before I do that, let's get a little smart. 3, 2, 1. Glasses definitely make me look smarter, feeling more intelligent all the time. The Napier Nomad, that is an engine that was developed in a post-World War II era, and it was introduced to me at a turbocharging class when I started working for a company called Cummins. Prior to that, I worked 5 years at a turbocharger company called Borg Warner Turbo Systems. So sure, I'll take another class in turbochargers. I didn't learn much new, got a nice big workbook off that. But this engine was talked about by the instructor, and the instructor had just a single grainy picture of it. It was an engineering exercise in recouping all kinds of lost energies, whether it's gas flows or lost heat, and they recoup it and put it back into the system to gain more power, more efficiency, and the goal was to get transatlantic flight. So flying from across the Atlantic and without stopping for fuel. So in order to do that, they had to have an engine that was super efficient. The difference was, in the end, they had a very complicated, supermassive, very heavy, very complex engine. And it was basically a piston-driven engine with what looks like a turbine engine hanging off the side of it, and gear drives and everything, very complex machinery. It was successful in what it was doing. It was one of the most efficient engines made. However, it was more or less usurped by a technology that was already replacing it, and that was the turbine engine. Turbine engine and turboprop, which was what was hanging off the side of this thing. That lesson to me is important because where it goes all the way back to what the internal combustion engine is going through right now, and it's facing the electric motor. And 100 years ago this happened, where it was a three-way battle between steam engines, electric motors, and batteries, and the internal combustion engine, or ICE engine, or ICE. The three technologies were kind of in a three-way battle for the consumer, and what made the internal combustion engine more feasible to the average person was the starter motor. Prior to that, they had to go out and hand crank the thing, and it was very dangerous. People could break their arms or whatever. Steam engines were overly complicated, very hard to operate. They had been around a while, but they also presented some dangers too. The electric motors were just limited by their batteries. In fact, they were preferred by many. They weren't very fast, but someone could get in it, very simple to operate. They'd move along, they were silent, and they worked very well. A good example of that is Henry Ford's wife actually owned one. I did get pictures of that at the Henry Ford itself. I'll put that in here. What made the internal combustion engine win out over the other two was the introduction of the starter motor. So effectively taking a battery and a starter motor and making it a turnkey operation where you can get in and start the engine without being a danger to yourself. That and the advent of gasoline and the abundance of it helped it win out. But over time, the last 100 years, many of which I've been assisting in developing, I've seen the advent of more and more electronics, electric motors and stuff, assisting the engine, helping it become more efficient, helping it become more powerful, helping it meet emission standards. And it's all as a result of adding more and more electric motors. Those electric motors come in the forms of, fan motors, fuel injectors, throttle motors, EGR valves, fuel pumps, and eventually, water pumps, and even getting into hybrids where they're actually using a big electric motor to help propel the vehicle. Very similar to what the Napier Nomad was going through. You're adding more and more complexity. You're adding turbocharger that grew into a turbine engine to help drive the system, but in the end, you only really needed the turbine engine. And that's really what's going on with EVs right now. Hybrids are that kind of stepping stone, but we're kind of at the Napier Nomad yes, you get an internal combustion engine very, very efficient when you're doing a hybrid version of it with the electric motors, adding more batteries, adding more motors. What you end up with is asking the wrong question for the right answer. So the question should have been, instead of how do we make this internal combustion engine more efficient, it should have been how do we get the vehicle from point A to point B more efficiently. So sometimes you have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture and ask the right questions. Adding cost and complexity as a hybrid engine and with an electric motor in it and batteries, and you guys still have everything else, all the vices of the internal combustion engine with the addition of electric motor and battery, adding cost, complexity, weight, and everything to the vehicle, and you end up with a vehicle that's not very appealing. Prius much? But when you end up going to pure EVs, you eliminate the majority of the cost, complexity, and we now have the battery technology that's developed to get you from point A to point B far more efficiently. Not just that, but faster and more fun and quieter and no emissions whatsoever. So all those things combined, it's kind of the short answer, like I said, verbal diarrhea version of the Napier Nomad. And what the internal combustion engine has been going through, we've 100 years of massaging, 100 years of adding electric motors to it to get it more efficient, to get it to do things that it normally wouldn't do, like passing emissions. And then combine all those electric motors and just make one big one. Problem solved. The lesson on your Napier Nomad. There it is in a nutshell. Till next time. Where's my music? Whatever. Bye.